Alright, so you still with me? Great. Okay. So we're going to get into different types of polyamory and non-monogamous relationships. Polyamory is, well, I guess it's more like ethical non-monogamous is very inclusive to a lot of different types of polyamory and non-monogamy. There are people who are in relationship anarchy relationships where where it's like a King Arthur's round table. Everybody gets the same say, the same persuasion, the same weight, as it were, in a relationship. It's very popular. It's wildly popular. But again, it depends on what you can do. It depends on your comfort levels and all that sort of thing. There are swingers, which is I've been asked if I am one. It's a little bit strange to use that terminology because it feels very Austin Powers like. That's a very 70s term. Nobody really uses that anymore. I feel like saying groovy every time I hear it. And that's when people are in a relationship and then they sometimes sleep with other people. Is generally what a swinger is. That does fall under polyamory. It's just I wouldn't necessarily say that's exactly where we are. We do sometimes, which is great. That again, that gets into information that is largely between myself, my husband, and whoever else we were with. So that includes that, and then there are people who, like, say there's a person and they date 5 people, and those 5 people can only date that one person and nobody else. So there's a lot of different dynamics. There's a lot of different flavors out there. I don't think that particular one that I just mentioned has a label. If it does, I'm not aware of it. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can do this, and the general concept of polyamory is that there's no wrong way to do it as long as you're not hurting somebody. Yeah, so what Matt and I do is called Polyamory Hierarchy. It's a bit of a mouthful, and the point is that hierarchy is it's kind of like a pyramid. People are more familiar with like a king and queen, and then the prince and princesses, and the dukes, and the earls, and the whatever. Like, it keeps going down into, more and more people or whatever. It's just the basic concept of a pyramid, and basically at the top of the pyramid is Matt's and my relationship, our marriage. We chose to make that our huge priority. We did choose to get married. A lot of people ask us why we got married. It was our personal our personal preference. That was what we wanted to do. It's neither right nor wrong. I don't think we've met anybody who looked at it and went, ugh, how can you call yourself polyamorous and get married? Everybody understands it's just kind of a personal preference. Yeah, so we have what we call hierarchical systems. So Matt and I are called primaries. He is my primary partner, I am his primary partner. And that goes very hand in hand with a lot of monogamous concepts. That's the person I'm going to grow old with. That's the person I make my legal decisions with. That is the person that, if I die, my life insurance policy goes to him. Our children will bear his last name. That kind of thing. That kind of gets all included in there. And then anybody we date, it's called a secondary. And this is why it gets kind of controversial, because a lot of polyamorous couples catch guff for using this particular concept, and some of them rightfully so, because they can treat their secondaries like they are disposable. And that's never a good thing. You never want to make somebody feel like they don't matter. And you don't want to make someone feel like, well, they don't, they're just a secondary. Is a terrible thing for anybody to feel. I would not want to feel that way, and I would not want to make somebody else feel that way. So Matthew and I are very inclusive with our people that we date. Yeah. But it does, whenever we say that, we can get a lot of weird looks from people in the poly community who are like, oh, you're one of those. but it works for us, and generally it works for the people we date. Yeah. So, right, continuing on, again, if you have more questions about this particular part of it, feel free to ask. Right, so how does all of that work? Right, so, right. There are a lot of rules and boundaries that Matthew and I have sat down and talked about and worked out over this series of like 7 years or so. We're always evolving, we're always changing. So when we started with this, not as polyamorous, but just as open swingers, one of my first rules was you can have sex with somebody, but you can't kiss them. And obviously that changed. Everything evolves and changes over time. Your comfort levels, who you are as a person can change. If you're the same person you were at 15 as at 25 and then again at 35, then maybe you should actually get out there and like push yourself a little bit. Because you should be always evolving and always learning new things about yourself. Or at least that's what I think. So we have rules and boundaries. And there are a couple of words that I'm going to use here. So the first is a word called a metamor. So if my husband has a girlfriend, she and I are metamors. We have a relationship person in common. One of our rules is that any metamor of mine has to at least have a baseline understanding of what anxiety and depression is, and be able to communicate with me. I don't need her to be my best friend. I don't need to have some sort of romantic connection with her. But I need to know that I can talk to her. I need to know that if I have a panic attack, and it happens, most of them are ones that I can get through, but if it's a really nasty one, she's got to be okay with the concept of Matt coming home to take care of me, because it happens on my date nights with Matt too. It's not something I can really control. It's not a fun little quirk of my life. So those are like some of the boundaries with things like that. Protection is another one. As Dr. House once said, everybody lies, so you need to be careful. And eventually you can develop enough trust with a relationship or make decisions where you can do something that's called a fluid binding. It's kind of a weird concept. I don't know that I really want to go into it too in depth with this. I'm trying to keep it a little safe for work, as it were. But basically you can make a determination that you don't have to use condoms or barriers. That's between you and the person and everybody involved in that situation, because if Matt meets a girl and falls in love with her, or just strongly in like with her, and decides to not use a barrier, that still affects me, because obviously he and I are bonded in that sense. So it should be a conversation between all of you. And again, that comes back to the communication aspect. So decisions can be made. It depends on the person. It depends on the couple. It depends on so many things that are going on in that. So it's more like a recipe, like your grandma's recipe for cookies. There's the one on the back of the Toll House that you can use, but or there's a special brand. It just depends on what you prefer to do. So there's another term that we use called compersion. And compersion is when you're so happy for the person you're with, for the feelings they have. So when Matt experiences a strong emotion with somebody else, a good emotion, obviously I don't really like it when he's heartbroken, which happens. It feels good to me. It makes me feel good. And that's a huge thing that a lot of people don't understand too, is that there's that word, that compersion word. And so I often enjoy the fact that Matt is getting out there and enjoying his life and experiencing all of these great things. And I do not have to be that person that he's experiencing them with in order to feel joy or love from those things. That's a concept that's difficult to understand. It's weird the first couple times it happens. Like, you kind of, it takes a little adjustment. So if you also have questions about that, please feel free to ask me. It's a complicated concept that I'm trying to like squeeze down into a really quick little section. Right? Okay. So, and then finally, communicating needs. So I have specific needs, again, around my depression, anxiety. I need people who can handle that and handle the fact that Matt has a wife who has those situations, you know, has those things to work with. So, yeah, being able to communicate those things, being able to trust that he understands those, that he can find somebody who will also be supportive of those concepts, those things that I need. And then, you know, to trust that Matt will tell me what he needs is a huge thing. So, yeah, that's how our concept works. We're very inclusive of our secondaries. We only use that label because that seems to be the one everybody understands without me having to explain like who they are, what they are, whatever. I can just say this is our secondary, or Matt's girlfriend, or my boyfriend, or my girlfriend, or whatever. As a quick aside, Matt is straight heterosexual. I am pansexual. Not a lot of people understand what that means as well. If I'm in a concept, like if I'm just trying to like be real quick about it, I'll say that I'm bisexual because most people seem to understand that a lot easier. But then again, that implies the genitalia bits. And honestly, I'm just attracted to a soul. I really don't care what the, you know, as long as you're good with the hygiene and you're not a dick. I only care about what's in the soul. You know, I don't care about the physical vehicle you're running around in, the meat bag, as it were. So, yeah, that's what's called pansexual. My attraction is not physical. But yeah, again, that gets into different things. I date women for different reasons that I date men, so that all goes into there as well. Yeah, so that's kind of how our relationship basis works. And that's the dynamic we work with. If you have more questions about that, please ask away. I'll try to explain as best as I possibly can without wasting too much time.